there anybody here who'd like to speak at the public forum? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Name is Will Pelkey, and I am at 133 Portman Street. Kind of my usual push. Big fan of CTE education. I'm actually a little disheartened to look at the budget here and see a drop of one full-time. Now that person may be retiring, but still in terms of a budgeted position, I'm a little disappointed in that. And then I'm also looking just in terms of enrollment, if we're looking at the magnet schools, you have the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering, just for example. We have, according to the budget for 22-23, we have 15 elementary students enrolled. So it's one of those things I would love to see that CTE get branched out. Maybe not all the way down to elementary within our own schools, but let's start pushing that downward focus. We already have 15 people, or 15 students who are going to a very CTE-heavy position. I would like to see that increased even within our own walls, if you will. And I know it's a slow process, but again, jobs of the future. I would love to see those positions not be reduced, actually to be increased. I know I looked at, I went to the Team Paragon, which I know is outside of our purview, but still with, at President Fury's request, and just to see our high school students engaging in that in a real meaningful way. And the opportunities that can present them further. Again, CTE, I think, is just something we really need to focus more on. I mean, when you just look at the total amount of expenditure that we have currently inside of that, I think it just pales in comparison to where we ought to be at some point. That doesn't mean Romeo and Juliet doesn't have value, but you know, we need to strike, I think, a greater balance between the classical curriculum and something that's more fitting to the modern day and age in which we live, and our students are going to go out and have to work out in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else here? Okay, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak very briefly, and thank you for your service to the Windsor community. I'm Doug Shipman, the director of the Windsor Historical Society, and I'm not actually here to talk specifically about the budget or to ask you for any money. So relax, enjoy. So I appreciate this. I'll keep it short. The Society has always had a strong relationship with Windsor Public Schools. Wanted to provide a brief update as spring is approaching, which has traditionally meant this is student field trip time. With the pandemic and the last year's bus shortage, we have not seen Windsor students at Windsor Historical Society for over 3 years. We feel that exploring our town's history is a vital part of every student's education, so we're here to reintroduce Windsor Historical Society very briefly, and you'll understand why I'm doing it today. It's a little time sensitive. As many of you know, over the past 3 years, Windsor Historical Society has dedicated itself to more inclusive and collaborative approach to community history. We have a variety of field trip programs available that help students learn about this history. We also have a special bus fund, a school bus fund, to assist with paying for buses to reduce barriers to Windsor school participation. So something for teachers and administrators to be aware of. Our program director, Melanie Stringer, is working closely with Bonnie Feynman and the humanities team to ensure there's information available to teachers and administrators about our many programs, and we hope to see more students come and visit us this year. And the reason I'm here tonight is that we are also currently recruiting for a part-time museum educators to assist us in leading student tours and programs. So we hope that there may be some parents or retirees that might like to learn about history and share it with students of all ages. The position opportunity is posted on our website and on social media and closes this Friday. So if anyone's interested, I hope that they will contact us right away. Also, while we explore and share Windsor's Black history all year round, we do have 2 special programs to help honor Black History Month this year. We have a 3-part Black family history and genealogy series with popular genealogist Sandra Tate Eady. Starts this Thursday, but there's still time to register. It's an online program. And on February 25th, Saturday from 1 to 4, we have our opening reception for our newest exhibit about the Windsor Afro-American Civic Association. Some of you probably are familiar with that organization. It's called Inspiring Equal Participation, Windsor Afro-American Civic Association. It's a free reception. We'll have refreshments and hope that people will join us. So thank you again. I'll leave some materials on the table outside.
Thank you. Anyone else in the boardroom would like to address the board? Seeing none. Ms. Daly, is there any?
Can you ask that gentleman what time that last event he mentioned?
Mr. Shipman, what time is the last event you mentioned?
That will be Saturday, February 25th from 1 to 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone online?
Yes, there is. Ms. Jacobson, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Becky Jacobson at 50 Lighthouse Hill Road. I'm just calling in regards to discussions for the budget. As many of you know, I've got 5 kids in the school district. They are all, all 5 of my kids have either an IEP or a 504. So I am calling because I would like to see more money allotted towards special ed. The numbers that I've
Did we lose her? We're gonna stop the clock. Did we lose her? You're muted.
It's showing that she's still in attendance.
before at IEP meetings that we seem to be low on staff, whether it's paras, whether Clover has had a number of, I think, either guidance or.
Excuse me, Becky, excuse me, Ms. Jacobson, if you could start again, there was a part where you cut out for about 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I am asking that we see more money in the budget for special ed. We've got about 20% of the students in Windsor Public Schools are special ed, and that is high. The state average is around 13%, I believe. And I think we need more money in the budget that covers special ed services, that covers SEL, because in some cases, these SEL people could, be doing the work of some of the parents, especially if it's, to deal with behavioral issues that, apply to a 504 or an IEP. And I know particularly some schools have just been understaffed when it comes to social workers or school psychologists. And we're not serving this high ratio of special ed students well if we don't have that amount. I'm sorry, I've got a kid screaming in the background. We're not serving these students well if we don't put more money into the budget. And then likewise, guys, I'm on the phone. And then likewise, I think the district would be saving more money if we weren't losing so many students to CREC schools. And I think part of the reason we're losing so many students to CREC schools is because we still don't have a universal pre-K program. And I think parents are applying to the pre-K CREC programs, and then once the students are in there, they're just like, well, we'll already keep them in there. And I think that's something that the school district should probably look at and crunch the data on, because I think probably the increase in tax dollars by the taxpayers, I would probably even, would be less than what they'd be paying for pre-K elsewhere if they're paying for it. So that was on my mind as well. Anyway, as a parent, I'm just asking for more money allotted towards special ed. Thank you, and I'm sorry for all the background noise.
Wow.
Thank you.
And just for the board, I restarted the clock once she started speaking again, so whatever time she had, I went back to 0 and allotted her her full 3 minutes. So if you think she went long, that's the reason why.
Understood. Ms. Daly, is there anyone else?
There are no additional attendees with their hands raised.
At this point, not hearing anyone else, is there a motion?
Move to adjourn?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries 900. We are adjourned from the public forum, and I'll turn the gavel over to Mr. Lockhart for the Finance Committee meeting.
Clear your hands. All right. Good evening. We are going to call the Finance Committee meeting of February 7th to order. Could we please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, next is audience to visitors. I will recognize Ms. Daly for the script.
Good evening. This is Robin Daly from the Superintendent's Office. If there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board, you may do so in 2 different ways. If you are using the Zoom application on your mobile device or computer, you may enter your comments into the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the Zoom menu bar. Or you may raise your hand on your computer if your device has a microphone by selecting the participant's icon in the Zoom menu bar and then clicking raise hand, or by dialing *9 on your phone. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. When you're called on, you'll be prompted with "You are now unmuted." For clear communication, we ask that you do not place the call on speakerphone. No comments can be made against the employees of the school district or children outside of your own.
For those in the boardroom as well as in hybrid world, you have 3 minutes to speak. And those that are hybrid, you will hear Mr. Fury roughly let you know there's 30 seconds left. And then at 3 minutes, we will ask you that it's time, and at that point, we will wind down your comments. Those in the room, at 30 seconds, he will hold up the red card, and then at 3 minutes, he will hold it up permanently so you wind down. I will go in reverse order and start with hybrid. Is there anyone online who should be recognized?
At this time, there are no hands raised for the participants in the Zoom session.
Okay. Anyone in the boardroom wishing to be recognized? I am seeing and hearing none. Without objection from the board, we can close audience and visitors. Is there any objection? So ordered. Before we begin the discussion of the remaining items, which will be transportation, simple plant, L.P. Wilson salaries, employee benefits, dependencies, and then final statement of each board member. There was a question that was requested by Mr. Panos. The administration has not had an opportunity to address those questions, Mr. Panos, because our superintendent has been out ill. He is with us this evening online to get us through the process. I am asking for some latitude from the committee to allow him to be in the building with his staff to be able to get you those answers.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to us moving in that direction?
No.
I hear none. Dr. Hill, just want to make sure that you and I have good communication here. All right. All right. With that being said, as I stated, once we go through all the items, and then I will open it up to each board member to give an overview of what they feel is the budget and their sense of direction, and to see if we have a consensus of not having to have this meeting at this time next week. With that being said, Dr. Hill, since you are not here, do you want to designate someone here on your behalf, or do you want me to keep going through you, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would designate Ms. Batchelder.
All right. For the listening public, Dr. Hill is here. He is participating, but he's virtual. He's under the weather, but he is here and present and acknowledging what's going on. And he has designated Ms. Oh, I'm so sorry. He has designated Ms. Batchelder to act on his behalf in the boardroom. So at this point, I will recognize Ms. Batchelder.
Thank you. So we had covered number 2, transportation, last meeting, right at the end. I know it was kind of rushed, but if you wanted me to go back to that, I will. I wasn't sure if all the questions were answered, however.
Before we proceed, are we all set with transportation?
Let's see. Maybe a little,
Would you,
just a little, bit of review here. The reduction, we reduced the regular ed buses because you said there are several buses. You reduced the total number of buses, is that correct? And by 4, what was it?
Correct.
4.
Yes.
And because they couldn't use the buses because they don't have the drivers anyway.
So we're down 6 drivers, or 6 buses this school year at the start of the school year. And we do tinker back and forth with the additional 2 drivers and having spares. However, 4 of the 6 buses that we originally contracted with DATCO, since the pandemic hit, things are just, people and just act differently. So, I mean, parents are now bringing students to school more. Students are taking the bus as much. So I believe that we can eliminate 4 of our contracted school buses moving forward and still be in a very good spot transportation-wise, so long as we still get those 2 additional drivers plus our spares.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Without objection, we're done with transportation, is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I just would wonder, what would the size of the, or what would the, like, average number of students be with this elimination? And I'm only asking because I know sometimes, like, the Deerfield area, a lot of kids are concentrated in that area, and students often are pretty, like, you know, it's a pretty full bus because a lot of students that live in a small area. So
Right. So we do have some buses with 50 kids, absolutely. These are 77 passenger, however, you put a backpack as a kid for size-wise. So we do have buses that filled, but the majority are around the 20 to 25 limit. So the thought process was moving forward to designate buses that are at the high and middle that really are only transporting sometimes only 10 to 7 kids, especially at the high school, and looking at the model differently and utilizing our 10 to 15 passenger vans instead. The typical, you know, school bus is always that big bus, but if you're only picking up 7 kids, we can utilize a van. In a van, we can have any driver. They don't have to have that CDL. So that was one of the discussions we've had with DACO, that we're going to start utilizing just a different way of thinking about how to transport.
Yes, sir.
So, I was just thinking, you know, I'm not trying to make any big decisions tonight or anything, but just even for everyone's experience to get to school to be more equitable, I think it would be a nice idea to consider sometime trying to, I know it's a hard time right now because of the whole bus situation, so I'm not trying to like push down heavy on it now, but just presenting an idea in the air a little bit, because those students are not really getting the same right to school that the other students who have the freedom of being like 10 people on a 70 passenger. I mean, I know you're splitting that up or working that out so that students aren't necessarily in that situation or wasting all that bus anymore, but the students who are 50 out of 70 seats, more likely to get in fights or skirmishes about seats and space or who's touching who and whatnot. So it's just a lot to think about or a little to think about, hopefully, sometime.
Yep, no, absolutely, and trust me, we think about that all the time, and I know Principal Mahalko and Principal Gruber, you know, they get it the worst, if you want to say. But we're actually looking in the next month or two with the help of Christina Morales' office. So we're getting high school kiddos to tutor at those two schools. And then instead of just transporting them back, if they're 16 or older, we're going to look to hire them as bus monitors. So now they get to tutor, help our young kids, and then earn a little cash and help and get to be an employee and be a bus monitor and for the drive home for the kids. And I don't know about you, but the kids love the adult kids more than adults. You know, so we're looking forward to that, seeing how that works, and hopefully we can grow it more.
Ms. Taylor?
Almost like we did over the summer for enrichment. I know my daughter loved being at OE, and they loved seeing her. So I do agree with that. Something about the younger kiddos love seeing the high schoolers come through and everything. So that's a really great idea.
Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. I witnessed that at Loomis when Dr. Pierce had the interaction with the students from Loomis mentoring the younger students, elementary, and they just loved being with the older kids.
Yep.
And it was better for them because it wasn't like an older adult trying
Right.
to teach to them.
Right.
They connected quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Kaliski?
Thank you. Quick question regarding bus monitors. Does every bus have one?
No.
Okay.
Principals would love that. So we first put it out to our staff, whoever wants to. It's actually written in the para contract. They get $15 an hour just if they do it, just because it's hard to recruit. You know, it's the end of the day. But even that, we still have trouble at the lower grades.
But it's a great idea. I like having the high school students be offered that kind of
Right.
role, and it's so good for these young students too to see that. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to the physical plant. Ms. Batchelder?
Okay, so I asked our facilities director to join me tonight, Mr. Chuck Waterfield. Is it on that side? Our increase is quite substantial in this area, and this is, I've talked already through it. It's really, the majority of all these increases are strictly from our lock-in prices for electric and gas. And these are what the town is facing also, and Jim Bork is delivering the same news to the town council in all his meetings. But I just wanted to give Chuck the spotlight to just tell you guys what he does. He's just made just such a miraculous change, in my opinion, over the past 2 years since he's been on our team. So I hand it over to Chuck.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate that. It's been a busy couple of years, especially going through COVID and all that. But yeah, our physical plant's been very busy. You know, we've got a lot of projects coming up with the capital improvements, the town CIP projects that'll be starting actually in this building here as far as a lot of HVAC upgrades. And we've, not to mention a lot of the HVAC upgrades we have done in the past, but, you know, with the addition of the extra personnel that I was able to hire this year, we're able to do a lot more in-house. You know, we're able to cover more ground as far as preventative maintenance. It's just, it's really kind of, it's an honor to see how everything is kind of coming together. And that's pretty much in a nutshell. If there's any questions you guys have as far as physical plant, please ask. I didn't really prepare too much tonight because I wasn't really sure, how much you wanted to hear as far as an outline on each building, but.
Yeah, and I also wanted Chuck here because I know you have asked me to describe the happenings of Oliver Ellsworth, so that's really another reason why I asked Chuck. Just if we got into it, he can describe it so much more better.
I'll go last because I know I'm going to have a lot of questions, so I'll yield to the board first. Mr. Panos?
Could you, Ms. Batchelder, the plant maintenance went from 343,650 to, you're asking like 34% increase in that item. What is the dominant item in there? Why did that particular thing? I mean, I understand utilities, plant operations, increase in cost of materials, but maybe is it just more projects? Is that the idea? What is that increase for?
So, right, so the way we do the budget under the facility and maintenance area is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
You have a list of the major maintenance.
Right, but we break it out into plant operations and then plant maintenance. But within both of the operations and maintenance are costs associated just with the everyday increase of cost. So that is more how we just break it up. So the increase in cost of materials is a description of that line item also. But I'm going to pull up the actual budget just to give you a few specific examples.
And while you're pulling that up, that number is for all of our buildings?
Yep.
And this number is inclusive of anticipated service tickets, any repairs, any break fixes, anything that just may pop up that needs to be replaced? I'm assuming that's the line item, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, just wanted to make sure
And our
that's clear.
contracted services, our security, our elevators, all that stuff.
All right, Ms. Panos?
Right, you have a list here, don't you, of the, in the back? I know I saw them. But so you're saying that the reason for the increase is all cost of material? There's no additional, kind of
So,
project that you had that drove this increase?
so the major maintenance are the list of the maintenance items that each school has requested. That's a different budget than what you're looking at for plant maintenance. Maintenance is the maintenance of the district. So we have all of our equipment repair, any equipment that we have to repair, contract repairs, service contracts, like I was just saying with the security elevator.
Right, it's mainly painting and replacing tiles and.
Yep, general maintenance
balancing
supplies.
things.
Yep.
You picked up an HVAC, someone who could balance?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be doing a lot of, some of the major maintenance this summer, especially with the HVAC additional person. We're going to be doing some of that stuff
Okay.
in-house.
Right. Then, now, well, in that connection, you had also the Oliver Ellsworth. The idea was the equipment you bought was oversized. Is that correct? Or you had to buy, or that was available that you put in was oversized? Is that the idea?
Well, that would have been going back to the HVAC upgrade back in 2017. We're dealing with some of the issues currently that.
Oh, so that was before, that's pre-COVID.
Correct.
And so was that an oversizing? Is that the idea? What happened there? You have to, instead of, being a smaller enough and staying on or something, kind of over, and then it cuts out, or what? How does that work?
Is this the unit that was not custom made? It was almost like brought off the shelf and
Correct.
retrofitted for
Exactly.
the building? Yeah.
And it was done because the town was in a hurry.
Correct.
Because of the LED lights.
Correct.
To get the rebate.
I just want to make sure
It
we're
all
connecting
ties
the
in,
dots
yeah.
here, why we're in this position with that particular unit on that building. So if we ever go down this path again, we know not to make that mistake. We got to make sure that the unit is designed for the building.
Exactly.
Instead of picking something off the shelf and then trying to make it work.
Right. And that's something I'll be dealing with this spring when we start the chiller up.
Okay.
That's something we'll have to deal with.
I just want to make sure we connect the dots here, why
So
we have,
is it-
and why we've been documenting and saying this over and over again here.
Is that what, yes, you have, is that part of what you call here air balancing under Oliver Ellsworth? What is?
So the air balancing, so we've had mold issues, as you all probably know.
Yeah.
Especially in the summer months when it's more humid. So this summer, kind of struck me, we needed to do something, right away. And I started looking into the air balancing because I looked at the past project, the last HVAC upgrade, which is 2017. I noticed that they didn't do any air balancing at the end. So after our environmental company came out the second time and did some additional testing for mold, they confirmed that it was the same type of mold inside that's outside. So it's
Same type of,
same type of mold, so it's getting into the building from the outside. So that got us thinking that we figured the building is under some type of a negative pressure, which ultimately it was. They confirmed, they came in, and it was under a heavy negative pressure, meaning there was too much, we're moving too much air through the building. You want to have a building and more of a positive pressure. You want to exchange the air, but you want the building to be in a positive pressure.
okay.
So I had an air balancer come out, and they tested, they spent quite a bit of time going through each area of the school, every classroom. We just kind of made a temporary fix. The building currently is under a positive pressure, but in order to do that, we had to shut a lot of the exhaust fans off, turn the unit ventilators on high, open up the outside air dampers 50%. So that creates more of a positive pressure to the building, but we're still bringing in the proper amount of air that we need. It is a temporary fix, and as I go through this process, we'll have some recommendations on more of a permanent fix. I'm also working with the original engineers who engineered the project back in 2017. So they're very familiar with the school and with the equipment that was installed. So once we move through the rest of this winter and we can start up the chiller again in the spring and we can kind of address the chilled water issues, we'll have a better idea exactly what's needed to finally take care of the air quality in the school.
Is this all time and material work?
Correct. Currently it is.
So it's not under warranty anymore, so it's time and material. So we're doing time and material with a Band-Aid fix, and that's chewing away at our budget.
Right. Well, currently right now, what I'm doing or what we're doing isn't really that much. So we just did some air balancing. But before we get into any big dollar items, it might be something where we'll have to go back to the town maybe and talk, CIP numbers. But I want to have a plan in place before we do that.
Yeah, so I say, so these plant operations and maintenance, so it's strictly materials. You buy tiles to replace the floor or whatever, and that's what's going up? That is security cameras, painting, the door replacements,
Everything across the boards went up 50% plus. It's just,
pre-K lockers.
as you all know, I'm sure.
Yeah, right, you have, okay, there's, page 38, 37 have the projects. If you just take a look at them.
Yeah. He's on page 37 and 38.
Yep.
So he's going by major maintenance by sites.
Yep.
And those are the projects based off of what's being recommended.
Yeah.
So
So how do you scare the bats out of the chimney at Pequannock? Yes.
I'm having a harder time than I thought. That nobody wants to touch them. I mean, you can't because they're protected, but to deal with it, it's going to be an issue.
So for the committee, Paul is talking about the plant maintenance, which is $459,000, and he's referring to page 37 and 38 of what they plan on utilizing a large portion of that money for. Right, that's what he's referring to.
This is 486, this is planned.
Yeah, but
He's talking about the 486.
So if I can just, so major maintenance is a separate budget. So major maintenance is on
separate. Oh, okay.
36,
Okay.
site 81.
Oh, okay, so that's what I'm
So,
sorry.
and that's all of the
That's the confusion.
bigger projects.
So,
Physical plant, site 82, the plant operations and plant maintenance, that is the everyday upkeep of our, every building in the district, just like your houses. If something breaks, you have to fix it. That's what site 82 is.
oh, okay, well, maybe sometime you'll tell us how many brooms you buy and what they cost, something.
Roofing is a big issue, I can tell you right now. Some of at the high school, it's a 28-year-old roof, and we're, a lot of repairs.
Money's worth out of it.
That's a really good example. So I know, I'm not trying to, I know you're joking, but that's a really good example. So we're putting in 8,700 now at the high school roof because the
87.
CIP, 8,700, just as a
Make
Band-Aid.
repairs.
Just to keep it intact
Because
until
we're-
CIP come along.
Right, because we have water leaking in our art room, which the CIP to replace the high school roof isn't for 5 more years. So that maintenance line item is maintenance of the building. So it's things like that that come up all the time. I mean, I can give you lists and lists of the things that we're now having to Band-Aid or fix to wait for the upgrade on the CIP end.
Ms. Panos, all set, sir?
Well, I guess so, I mean, does that happen in this building? This sort of.
Water?
Yeah, water damage would be pretty bad. That would-
Any building.
Yeah, any building, yeah. Well, I just hope that we don't have these problems regularly on all our schools.
No, most of them, in the past 4 or 5 years have been, not most, but JFK, Oliver Ellsworth, Sage Park, last year, half of it. So they are slowly getting done, but the ones, like the high school, like I said, is in pretty bad shape. And it's not, in the CIP until 2028 for the construction, I think 2025 for design. It's,
Okay.
that's a little too long, I think, for the 28-year-old roof.
Okay.
I'll recognize Ms. Cantor, and then I'll look to my right before I go back to it'll be Ms. Cantor, then Ms. Taylor in that order, please.
Thank you. I know that Sage Park has a problem. 3.5 years ago, this past fall, they had a problem in the nurse's office because I went to pick up my son, and all the adhesive was coming up from the tile, and I know it's in other areas.
The flooring?
And- Right, the roof
Correct.
floor. And they said it's because of water. And I saw you last night at the town committee meeting, and you were saying that, but that was 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's part, I was finally able to get it into the capital improvement projects in the CIP. It's actually, it's in the design phase right now. That whole, here we go with the CIP. That whole front end of the building, the nurse's suite, the newer gym, the small gym, the front classrooms, those were all an addition that was put on back in 1993, 94. And shortly after that, from what I understand, they've developed moisture issues in the floor, through the floor water getting up through the concrete and through the tiles at times. And it was kind of intermittent. It comes and goes. Over the past few years, it's been getting a lot worse. And we had a company come in, we ripped up all the tiles, we put a floor sealer down. It was supposed to take care of a certain amount of hydraulic pressure to keep the floors stable. It lifted through the sealer. So last year, I had a company, Fuss & O'Neill, engineering company, come in, do some test cores to find out what's going on. Currently, right now, that whole slab on that whole front side, they did about 12 test bores. The slab itself is almost 99% saturated. Means it's just full of water. The areas that they tested have no crushed stone and no poly, no plastic underneath, no vapor
So is
barrier.
that why everything came through? I know because when we did our driveway, we live in Windsor near the river, and you have to put a lot of trap rock down.
Yeah.
Far more than you ever.
There's a high water table over there, a very high water table, and obviously a lot of pressure too. So it's currently, the town took it on as a CIP this year, because I explained to them at the last CIP meeting, it was last summer, I believe it was, that at times the water comes right up through the floors, creates slip hazards. You know, the custodians have to go back there several times a day in those areas and mop it up. But then it'll be fine for a week or two. But then it seems to be only after a really hard driving rain, a couple days later, the water starts to push up through. And we can't replace or refinish the wood floor in the small gym because there's so much moisture there. The gym is, the wood is no good anymore.
It's rotting.
So we can't do anything there until we get this moisture situation under control. So they have contracted with a company out of New Haven to come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan because it's, again, it might be something ongoing. They may even have to do some test boring and put test wells in to monitor the water levels because this could get very extensive, the fix to do this. I mean, you know, it's just, again, it was something that, for whatever reason, they didn't divert the water properly during the addition, or the renovation, rather. And we have to deal with it now.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor? Oh, I'm sorry. You have a question in relation to this, sir?
On this relation to this,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Mr. Spanish?
I mean, don't they put what is it called, French trench or something like this around somewhere, you know, to be able to suck the water out and, you know, keep it
Yeah,
low?
they'll have to do some drainage
You
work.
just
There's-
put a
there's-
trench, you put a trench around this.
Yeah, I think it's a little
building
bit
and
more
then-
involved than that, because that will take care of
Building
the outer,
support, right.
the outer edges,
Yeah.
because there is drainage on the outer parts, but I think there's just so much water that gets under that building. There could be a river under there. 2 years ago, when they redid the soccer fields at Sage Park, there was, I mean, I saw it. They were 3 feet down, and it was literally a river running through there. And they had a heck of a time dealing with the drainage in that field. They had to put a lot more, they had to do a lot more drainage work than they
They
figured.
added a lot of, dirt or something.
Stone or whatever, yeah. So it's, but, now we're talking about a building that's already built, the slab is already there. Now, they have to deal with it, it has to be done correctly, because we can't make any permanent fixes to the floors until it's done.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor?
Oh, Chuck,
That's a way to begin a statement.
I thought it was gonna be so easy today, but Danielle was like, "Let Chuck hear it." First of all, before I get into what I was gonna ask you, because then just the whole Sage Park thing got me really nervous, and then Miss Cantor mentioned the water, and then the things in the nurse's office and the stuff. So I'm just wondering, is Sage Park sinking?
No, it's not sinking, no.
Because that's what people are gonna think that you said.
Yeah, no. It's just, it's not sinking.
Okay.
There is no
There's no
structural,
river, please don't.
there's no structural issues with the concrete as far as anything.
You mentioned a river, I
moving,
just-
Settling, anything like that.
Okay.
Is there a
It's
sale on
just-
this building?
Right, exactly. I kid, but I'm serious.
Yeah, no, and unfortunately, there's just a lot of groundwater there. And, we have to, and I don't know what it is, over the past few years, I think the rain, the storms we get seem to be a lot more intense.
Yeah.
In a short amount of time, so, I believe they'll fix it. Again, this is a town, CIP project now, so, they'll, I'll be watching them, and we'll get it fixed right, for sure.
Great, my son's going there next year. Yeah, get it done. You don't want anybody falling through in the small gym.
No, I'm excited to see what the
Blow it
plan, what the plan is to fix it, yeah.
Right. So my original question was, and I know this has come up over the years, but I don't think, you weren't here when, I think the last time we touched upon it, and I don't know if this needs to go to Ms. Batchelder, but when we're thinking about electrical costs, we're thinking about savings, we're thinking about, just sustainability and all those things, have we thought about solar panels at any point again, pricing that through, and what's the savings there?
Yeah, that's a good question, and generally that runs through the town to CIP, but they are talking about, last year we did half of the roof at Sage Park. You can only really put solar panels on if the roof is in really good shape. It can only be a couple of years old, which makes sense. So the second phase of that roof is slated to begin in 2024. So once we get the second half of that roof completed, then we can move forward and put in solar panels on Sage Park, and then as well as, Quonic when it comes time, Clover when it comes time. All of those have partial roofs, but they need to really be, fully roofed to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? Looking to my right. Ms. Clace, and then Ms. Gillespie.
I just want to say thank you for everything you do, and we appreciate your work, and it's really excellent.
Oh,
So
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ms. Gillespie?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm hoping you can help answer this question. And
I'll try.
you talk about water rates and the fact that water consumption has actually continued to decrease. I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain why it's decreasing? Because obviously if it's decreasing, they're going to raise the cost of it so they can make money, which I understand. But
You
it's
mean in general, overall decrease?
yeah.
All I could think of is just, the equipment that's installed now is more, water conscious,
More
more
energy
energy efficient. Yeah, we're using less water in general,
Okay.
We're building facilities with less shower facilities. It's like, people are, the sports aren't taking the showers like they used to, not the big showers like that, but, yeah,
They go home.
yeah.
Okay, it was just an
been-
interesting comment in there, so I was just hoping just for a little bit more clarification, so thank you.
Yeah. You go to a field house, they don't even put,
Wait a minute, what?
they'll put one shower in a field house, and it'll be like
I
a,
mean, one shower with 8 heads around it, right?
no, like one ADA size shower, and that's it. It's just,
These kids are pretty smelly, isn't it?
They come home and they walk by you.
So please pardon my shock and my ignorance. I mean, when I played sports, you showered before you went.
me as well, absolutely.
What year was that?
83 to 87.
2023, they shower at home.
But a lot of the fixtures they're much more,
Like I said, I
the
know
consumption
when
is
they walk
way
by me.
less. It's not 5 gallons,
I'm
a flush,
sorry,
it's 1.8, so over the years. Yeah.
More efficient, of
Absolutely.
course. Thank you.
All set, Ms. Galinsky? Yes. Mr. Fury?
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Got one question, it's probably for Danielle, and it has to do with page 34, the last sentence on page 34, about adding a maintenance worker. Was this from last year?
Yes, that's when we added our 2 positions.
Okay, so,
I just kept it in because it's an increase of 2 positions still in the same book.
okay.
I mean, I could take it out if you'd like.
No, I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing, my math was,
Oh, no.
I didn't have to call on Noha to explain the math, the new math. As Ms. Clace had said, I want to thank you and also thank all the employees that work
Appreciate it.
under you. I've known Horace White at Pequannock for almost forever.
Excellent.
And there's, my kids went through Pequannock, and he still asked about them by name. Mr. Hatton at Sage Park and his staff this weekend for robotics that we had was wonderful, very accommodating. They're on time. Those people do work a lot of hours and odd hours, but they're great. We have very lucky and fortunate that we have such great staff throughout.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, it really is.
Any other questions?
And that's why we need to keep Chuck on our side when the town is looking for the
Not going
replacement
anywhere.
for WIT. I know.
So. Well, I want to say thank you to you and your staff. I'm one of the few that's been very vocal saying that this line item is just woefully under budget. I've been saying that for my entire time on the board. You're doing a lot with 2 fish and 5 loaves, and I'm not sure how you're doing it, but you're doing it, especially with the time and material service calls that we have just for the break fixes. We know stuff is hanging on by a wish and a prayer, and I want to make sure that when we present this to the town council, that they understand truly what's going on. We know stuff is on the CIP, but at the same time, we're trying to handle stuff as much as possible with the little bucket of money that we have. And all it's gonna take is just one membrane roof just failing, and then we lose a whole section of a building. It's gonna take one boiler just breaking down at the least opportune time. It's gonna take one air conditioning unit in the middle of summer, near the end of the year, that's just gonna shut a whole building down. It's these type of things that we know there's stuff wrong with it, but we keep throwing pennies at the problem instead of actually fixing the problem and creating an environment that's conducive for every single individual that walks in our buildings. So we've been woefully underfunded here. You're doing a great job holding on to what we have, but if we keep doing these break fixes, we keep doing these time material service calls until it gets us to the point where we can actually fix it, we'll probably spend more money than an actual brand-new unit with the labor it's costing to put it in. So it's either an ounce of prevention or a pound of cure, and sadly, we're choosing a pound of cure in a cheerful manner, in my opinion. So thank you for all you do. We know we're sending you into some very difficult situations, and you do it with a smile, so thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
All right. And I didn't ask any questions because a lot of my questions were already asked, so I did not want to double back, so.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
You can always reach out to me anytime, anybody if you have any other questions. Thank you. Not a problem.
Recognizing Ms. Batchelder for LP Wilson.
LP Wilson. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're in this building, sorry. I was going to salaries. So, yes, so LP Wilson, we obviously share it with the town, but we actually do all of the upkeep and maintenance, and then we more or less bill the town and they reimburse us. So that's how we do this shared space. We've been doing it since I've been here, many, many years before, but our big increase or project that we're doing is our HVAC system this summer. So the entire LPW side of, the entire Board of Ed side of LPW will have a total upgrade for HVAC ventilation. Just the ventilation part, and within that project, we are abating the floor tiles on the perimeter. So nothing in the middle where Dr. Hill's office, my office, the central core, just on the outskirts, all of those offices and Spark Wing. So it's gonna definitely take a big lift to do all of this coordinating this summer, but we're starting now and, mapping it out, and we're gonna do it in phases, bring people in, bring people out, and just take it day by day, really, because it will be a lot of moving parts. But this budget stays flat pretty much every year. We're able to recoup any funds needed from the town reimbursement part of it. Any questions?
Any questions? Start with Mr. Fury.
Thank you. On page 35, it talks about this year continue upgrading HVAC, and you're saying that this is going to be done in the summer, so after July 1st, is it considered
So,
for next year's budget versus this year's budget, or?
so we didn't even have the final approval yet when this book was printed just a couple weeks ago, and we just got notified. So what we've been doing Chuck been doing is just slowly upgrading the HVAC for our staff for, ventilation concerns. Now, the CIP project passed, and now the CIP is going to do the entire Board of Ed section.
Okay. And again, under goals for this year, it talks about continue asbestos removal and carpet replacement throughout the building, though I didn't see that listed of what you've done so far. Is that going to be done at some point this year, as well as some of it carrying over to next year?
Yep, so our hope is because we have such a short window in the summertime, and knock on wood, we haven't had any snow days, our hope is to actually get Christina and her office out of here in the beginning of June, get her area done first to get her back in because of registration. So our plan, we hope, is to actually start the work this May and June for the abatement, and then just continue around the horseshoe throughout the summer, and the Spark Wing will be at the end because they can just do all of that at once.
Thank you.
Looking to my right. Looking to my left. Was that your hand up, Mr. Panos?
I was just wondering, maybe you covered it already, but the LPW contribution, what is that?
So we have a LPW committee, which consists of a few members on our side, the Board of Ed, and a few of the town. You know, so me and Chuck, obviously, are the two on our side. Peter, Mr. Souza, and Dr. Hill join us twice a year on granting the budget for moving forward. So we look at projects that we can do within that fund. That fund is housed at the town. So the Board of Ed contributes $123,000 each year, and then the town contributes their portion, 70% of their portion, into this fund. And then from there, we pay all the bills, and then that's what they use to reimburse the Board of Ed for their side. And then anything remaining is the balance that we carry forward. Anything remaining is our, pot of money, if you will, for any improvements within LPW.
Okay, so, but that's not utilities, those are.
That's us, no. It's like we pay ourselves.
Oh, you
We
paint.
pay into the LPW fund to try to build up this fund so we can do projects that are needed within the entire building, senior side and our side.
Like ventilation, or painting, or tiles, or what? What do you?
Yeah, you can. I'm trying, so this is a delicate area, but I mean, a lot of the time, the seniors, that side of the building has,
It's not for picnics though, right? Is it?
what?
It's not for having.
No, they
picnic
have
there.
new stuff over at the senior side.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of projects on the town side of the LP Wilson over the past couple of years. They pay the bigger portion, I guess, of the LP Wilson fund.
Okay.
So the senior center got quite a big upgrade, as you may or may not know. They've moved a lot of their office space to the other part of the building to open up bigger areas for the seniors.
Oh, okay.
So they've done extensive upgrades to the auditorium.
Okay.
Painting, lighting, sound, the whole 9 yards. They did a nice job, but yeah, there's been a lot of upgrades that comes out of the LP Wilson fund.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we haven't seen too much of that on this side.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Looking to my right, I see no one. Looking to my left, see no one. Without objection, we can move on to salaries. Pat Elder?
Great. So these are our, page 39, all of our current union bargaining contracts. As you can see, paras, admin professional, and our custodial maintenance, food service, and security are up for renewal this spring, like I've talked about in my prior page of personnel resources. So these are just giving you the examples of the timeline for the contracts, and on page 40 is all certified and non-certified salaries above and beyond everything within each site page, which lists out tutors, building subs, stipends. This is flat salaries, annual salaries of all staff.
And that's with the 6 bargaining units listed on page 39. Any questions for Danielle on this site? Mr. Fury?
Thank you. The bargaining units, it looks like 3 of them are, contracts are up at the end of the year, and it sounds like you're in negotiations now.
start very, very early on starting, right? Trying to get dates to start our first.
But do you expect something coming to the board this calendar?
I hope so. That's my plan, because what's unfortunate with this is they're not like the teachers and administrators that have strict deadlines and dates per state statute. They can go on for 2 years after the fact. So I'm trying to get meetings set to
And if that
get going.
happens, if it does go beyond June 30th, do they get paid at the current rate?
Yep, so they'll get paid at their rate today.
And then if it ends up them getting a raise, let's say 3 months or a year down the road, it's retroactive to July 1st?
Correct.
And so where you get on page 40, the non-certified employees, is that pretty much a big estimate? Because there's a number of non-certified employees here who we don't know what, I don't know how it's certified employees, and like especially the WEA, we know
Right.
exactly to the dollar what we've allocated based on the contract.
So I use the average salary increase that we've done over the past 5 years to just do a estimate of an increase, and then we go from there. That's how we do it every year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Looking to my right, looking back to my left. Mr. Panos?
I think page 41 is included in this. Is that the idea? So this is a list of the staff.
Yes, so this, so every site, after every school site has a list of all the staff, so this is kind of a catch-all of everyone else that doesn't really belong to a school.
Okay. Well, like the physical plant manager, I mean, who's sitting here. This is, I just, the column to the right, which indicate, for example, social emotional learning coordinator, 93,840. Maybe we'll talk about that in a while, but this would be, does that indicate that it is a grant supported? Is that what that is?
Yep, so if you look at the very top, it's actually, there's another
fiscal
layer.
year
It is a little
23.
confusing. See fiscal year '23 salary?
Yep.
It should say grant next to that. That got cut off.
Caught an error, huh?
You did, Mr. Panos.
See? I'm with you. All right, so okay, this is physical pain, that's right. I think that's good. Now, let's see, is there any? Yeah, I think,
All set,
I
Mr.
think,
Panos?
so, yep, thank you.
Any other discussion on salaries? Looking to my left, seeing no one. Looking to my
Yeah,
right. seeing
On that,
Wait a minute, I saw Mr. Fury's hands first.
no.
Oh, I saw your
Yeah.
hand, so then Mr. Panos?
no, well, maybe it'll come later, the I think it's probably later under the appendix. I was just wondering, the SEL coordinator it comes under the grant for the Alliance grant.
Correct.
Now, well, maybe you can answer the question later under that because it comes under the appendix, but
Okay.
do we actually receive a fund for that? I mean, I was just wondering in the accounting for this, and others like it, where it talks about later in the appendix, you have something about that it's Alliance granted. Do we receive that money directly from the state?
Yes.
Oh, so it doesn't flow through the ECS?
No, it did for like 3 months in a transition like 5 years ago, I want to say, but the majority of districts that receive Alliance funding receive millions. And what towns were doing when that money went directly to the town, they were keeping it and they weren't giving it to the district. So the state quickly turned that around and gave it directly to the districts like it was the Alliance from day one.
You mean there was corruption?
Not in Windsor, but that's all I can say for other towns.
No. Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll talk about it later.
All right, any other discussion? All right, employee benefits, Ms. Batchelder?
Okay, so again, an increase. So this represents the increase that I talked about a few times already through this school year. So we were 1.4 million over our claims last school year. So this number is incorporating that proposed increase, or excuse me, the projected claims moving forward. And also in this dollar amount is the Board of Ed portion of continuing to fund the 401A pension plan, which every year we have to put in about 50 to 75,000 to beef it up because we're moving all of our staff hired after 2013 to this plan.
Any discussion from the board? Mr. Panos?
Let's just ask a question. ACA, what is it? I mean, I thought under the bottom there, the first bullet under implement ACA forms in-house in lieu of contracting out to IRS forms. What do these acronyms mean?
So that is for benefits back during, that's from the Obamacare. We have to issue ACA forms for insurance.
ACA is
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, so similar to like the W-4, so this time of year, we're sending out all of our federal forms for employees so they know what they've contributed and their benefits that they have. So we've been contracting out, actually, for the past few years, but we were able to connect with other school districts and had a Munis rep come in and train our staff internally, so we built the system within. So we'll be able to push these forms out ourselves now and not pay to have someone else do it.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Panos?
Sort of.
Would you like a follow-up?
The employee health and wellness plans. Can you tell us something about that? The employee health, and what do you mean by that?
So we just have worked with Anthem over the past 2-3 years, more so, to just, one, the Anthem platform is very robust on getting individuals to sign up and actually utilizing the platform to do self-care and self-help.
Okay.
Nutrition, exercise, and we also want to try to start doing stuff in-house for our employees, very similar to what the town of Windsor does.
Okay.
Any other question, Mr. Panos?
That was. No.
All right. Thank you. Looking to my right. Ms. Claes?
I just want to say that I appreciate these efforts because I think they're all retention efforts and the way to keep staff engaged. So I think it's really important to continue that kind of work. So thank you.
Looking back to my left. Looking to my right. I believe we're all done with this section without objection. All right. Last is the appendices. For this one, I will go in order to make sure if there's any questions. So I'll start with you, Ms. Claes. Is there any appendices you would like to be looked at?
No, thank you.
Right. Mr. Halleck?
No. I don't believe
Okay.
so. This time, no.
Mr. Wilson? These are not last comments, these are just appendices. All right. Ms. Kalinsky?
No, not this time.
Taylor?
No.
Ms. Cantor?
No, thank you.
All right. Mr. Fury?
No, thank you.
Mr. Panos?
Thank you. I do have a question on page 45,
Okay.
which is the competitive grants, Appendix B. Let's see, we had some reductions. You had a reduction here of the totals. Let's see, was total grants? Oh, I see. This is, so the competitive grants are all the same, but the total at the bottom is the sum of both. The first page, 45, I see. So most of the reduction is in, well, all the reductions are in the entitlement grants, which are on the first page, page 45, as I say. So-
Correct. It's
So you have,
majority of all the ESSER funding.
So the big losses then, there was a decrease, and I'm just wondering what was lost. For example, we had ARP ESSER IDEA, about a third of the way down. It went from 119, 120,000 to nothing, right? So you had several of them you're projected to go to zero.
So these are all of our ESSER funding that originated and that had either 1, 2, or 3 years, and then they would be done, that we had to spend the money within 3 years. So 23, 24 is that last year.
Okay. And so this doesn't cause any...
We knew
was-
this, yeah.
Okay. That's right. Now, okay, and so
That
the...
satisfy Appendix B for you, sir?
Yeah.
Any other appendices you would like to have looked at?
There was a, okay, I see what you mean. I thought, you see, the question I asked before, was because it said somewhere down here, it said that ECS funding was, that the Alliance was part of the ECS grant. See, so is...
It is.
Yeah.
For the committee, Mr. Panos is on Appendix
Sorry.
C at the
Right.
bottom of the page.
Take a look at Appendix C, page 46, and it's Alliance ECS grant, and there's let's see, it's probably not worth going. I think you already covered it. That this somewhere here in the notes it indicates that it was rolled into the ECS,
Right.
and so.
It's
but you-
called Alliance ECS, so if you were to look online what your ECS number is for each district, it would have the Alliance number in there.
Oh,
But they just give the Alliance portion directly to the district.
okay. That's what I wanted to, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other appendices, Mr. Panos?
No,
All right. Thank you. And I have no questions on the appendices. So without objection, we're done with the appendices. All right. So we're at 7:27. I know we typically take the break. What we can do is at this point, I will go back around and ask everybody to give their comments about the budget at this point. And then we can come to some consensus. Do we need to have the meeting next Tuesday? We can just cancel it altogether tonight. And we can get some, we're not voting on if we are approving the budget tonight. There will be no votes tonight. This will be, I will seek general consensus to forward this budget to the president to have it placed on the agenda at the next regular meeting. So that's where we're going at this point. So I'm expecting everyone to have some comments on the budget as they see fit and to share their thoughts with the committee. So I will go back in the order that I started. I'll start with you, Ms. Claes.
I would like to thank the superintendent and the staff for a lean and well-crafted budget. I will support this budget, although, well, let me just say, I think it supports excellence in teaching and education. We had our contracts negotiated and positions were supported so that we can make sure our teaching staff are positioned in the buildings to work with our students. I think it supports rigor in academics. There's curricula, professional development, teaching and staffing positions, as I talked about, and there was a build-out of ECE and tech ed. And I think it's forward progress out of the COVID pandemic through SEL positions and family engagement. Although I will be supporting the budget, I would love to see more special ed, safety expenses, more physical plant expenses, universal pre-K, food security, more ECE, more tech ed, and a lot more items. But I know that's unrealistic, so I just want to thank everybody for their work on this. I think it was really hard work, a lot of creative ways of taking on activities in district rather than contracting out for them, and I really appreciate the work that went into this. So I will support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just alerted, Ms. Batchelder, is there someone here from food services that should have been recognized, and I missed it?
Well, so I was not sure because there was a lot of discussion about food service and enroll in seeing if we were going to take on all of the food service of the district. So I had asked Patty Patton to come. I didn't know if there was any questions while she is here, and also Christina Morales, who oversees the Office of Family and Community Partners, Treehouse, and FRC.
All right.
If you don't have any questions, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity because you have them here in the flesh.
All right, so we went through the sites, but, you know, I will pause the comments. And Ms. Clace, I will come back to you just in case if you have any comments. Not all again, but just if there's anything additional based off what you're about to hear. So at this point,
Just if there's any questions. If not, then it's okay.
are there any questions? I think Ms. Taylor had a question.
Well, yeah,
but
it's a food service.
Food service, please. Recognizing Ms. Taylor.
So we've had a lot of questions come to myself and Mr. Walston because we sit as the liaisons from the board to the Windsor High School SGC. And so we're getting a lot of questions about the food quality and the food options ever since COVID and lunches and breakfasts have been free. Wondering, was that the reason for the drop in the options? Was it the reason for the drop in the quality? And so just for the viewing public, if we could just get your perspective of where we are with that.
We were very limited during COVID as to what we could procure. And unfortunately, we really did have to streamline what we were ordering. It is coming back quite a bit. And we are opening up to more of our vendors are coming back with the items that they've had in the past. It's unfortunate quite a few of the manufacturers did completely cut out lines that they had, and a lot of them were the high-end lines.
So basically boils down to supply chain issues.
Unfortunately, yes.
Awesome. And so you said things are coming back. Do you think that's because there's a change in the economy, or is there something that we can see possibly worked out between now and the end of the year? Or do you think that it's just, in your professional opinion, it's projected to be a better options for maybe next school year?
More so next school year. We did have, at our School Nutrition Association meeting, industry come in, and unfortunately, it's the same everywhere. They're having a lot of problems rehiring people. So they literally have plants that are not working because they can't hire people.
Thank you so much for the clarity and all that you do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for food services?
Well, I'll let her go first.
Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I know that's even the same thing in the grocery stores because you go in and you ask for specific things and they don't have it and they never know what they're getting.
All right.
Thank you.
All set, Ms. Cantor?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
I'll yield.
You all set, sir? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Clace?
I believe there's going to be new federal standards for school lunches and what
It hasn't, it's not passed yet, but they are looking to make the sodium and sugar restrictions a lot higher. which means different
That's- I'm
products.
sure the students will love. Okay.
No, they won't, but we'll try. I know.
Without salt, I'm sorry.
I know. I actually had somebody ask me for a shaker of salt when I was at the high school the other day, and I was like, we don't have salt.
All set, Ms. Clay? Any other questions for food services? All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Treehouse? Any? Treetop?
That's okay.
So I've heard just from SGC, some of the students talk about an issue with like at the high school, I guess towards the end of some lunch waves, like food is running out and students were being offered different options than what was being prepared for
Well,
that day.
we serve 6 different meals.
Yeah.
So we try very hard to make sure we have enough of every single thing by the end of the very last lunch wave for that very last child. And I do have to tell you, it does happen.
Yeah. So was this a problem that occurred more, like during COVID or post-COVID? Than,
Well, during COVID, it was really hard for us to predict.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know who was coming in. And then with the fact that we didn't have, enough of one thing and we had to substitute it with another, yes, it definitely does happen.
Okay.
But we're trying very hard to make that not happen anymore.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions of anybody in the room that we missed? Thank you very much. I will yield back to Ms. Clace. Is there anything you wish to add to your statement, ma'am?
I am done with my statement, thank you.
And Danielle, thank you for cueing me on that. Appreciate that. Mr. Halleck?
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the administration for submitting their budget. I know everyone on the team worked really hard at it, so I definitely appreciate all your efforts. This is definitely, obviously, a very tough budget. The increase is double from last year. So but definitely could have been a lot worse, as I think we all know. Definitely think there may be some changes that we could discuss, but I definitely want to have more talks with my caucus and the rest of the board members in the coming days and weeks before our next our regular meeting and vote. I am disappointed that we did cut the full-time of a community service coordinator position. I feel that is a very valuable position. It's not just tracking student hours, but the person in that role was definitely a major face to the community for Windsor Public Schools, and building relationships with other agencies and groups within our community. I see most students, whether they're going to go on to doing internships or whether they go to college or whether they go on a vocational track, they're going to have to most likely have to do an internship, and I feel that this program really gets them ready for that. So I definitely think it's a big loss to cut the program or to cut that position 100%. I would be open to compromise on that as far as making it a part-time position or something, but I definitely think it's worth discussing that we somehow find a way to keep that position around, because obviously, as many of you know, my father-in-law was in that position for a long time. I watched him grow that program, and it's not just, a Monday through Friday thing. It's a lot of the work is on the weekends. You're out with students. You're doing it side by side with them. So I just, like I said, I think it would be a big loss for our district if we were to lose that completely. But I do get that we are in a tough budget year. I know that obviously cuts have to be, things have to, yeah, it's obviously a tough budget year. I get that, and I know everyone else does, but I definitely think it's something that we should consider. And at this time, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, as far as my feelings on the budget, I believe it's very creative and, well, it's creatively responsible, I'll say that. Our numbers are far better than the numbers of our neighboring districts, and I think that's something that we could celebrate, even if it's a lot larger than what we've seen in the past, just because we know the climate of the economy right now. We're all just trying to survive it, right? And as a district, we're trying to survive it as well. But one thing that comes to mind to myself when we're in budget season is trying to make Windsor the most marketable district we can make it. So the first thing that's going to come to mind for me in that aspect is investing somehow in the retrieval of our Windsor kids from these schools that are costing us a lot of money. I think the block parties we've had over the summer were a great step towards that, even though it was just like, some of them were just town stuff, but we also had our own as well. And I think that was a pretty good step forward. I think we can possibly do more in that aspect to try to just retrieve or make ourselves more attractive to the families and the students who are not currently in our district, so we can save money in that aspect. And maybe investing a little money in that area will benefit us in the long run as we see that line item start to decrease. The big thing for me is always building community. I think everything that I'll stand for on the budget is going to be falling under the idea of building community. We have to prepare our kids to afford Windsor, and a lot of times we have people come and speak about, well, the young man in the room here, speak about often pathways and certain things that we can do to make kids just be able to afford Windsor, because we know cost is rising and times are changing and kids are leaving because the allure of being somewhere where it's cheaper to live and easier to make a life, even if it means you get paid a little bit less elsewhere. But I'd like to, I believe our budget, with some of the presentations that we've seen from things that they're doing in CTE as well, supports the fact that we are thinking and moving in that direction, and I'm happy for that as well. Underneath building community, I think also falls preparing our facilities, because at the end of the day, 5, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, these are going to be the same buildings that we're offering to our students and to the taxpayers at the time. Whether or not they make it there is really up to us and the decisions we make when it comes down to the budget. And I just think, overall, the budget is very responsible. I'm happy with the fact that this looks like something we can present and not be shut down with, hopefully, crossing all fingers. And But as far as like a wish list or such, I'd really hope that in the mindset can grow towards being more innovative in what we can do to build community, because I think in building community, we're pushing kids out of Windsor that are more prepared and more willing to come back, because when they get to these other places and they see how the lifestyle is in these other places and they remember what Windsor offered them when it's time for them to settle down and make a family, and they're making their big bucks and they're doing whatever they did out there in the world, they'll come back and say, hey, I kind of want to give my kid the opportunity I had in what I was offered here in Windsor. So I think we should just keep that in mind as well. But overall, I will be in support of the budget.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Galinsky?
Hi, thank you. I want to thank the staff and the administration for the hard work and putting the budget together. I know how time-consuming that is and how difficult it is, from a personal standpoint as well as from, professional aspect as well. But I would not be doing the community justice either if I just said, okay, I'm totally fine in support of the 4.84% increase. So I'm not going to offer my suggestions because I am not the one who is fully immersed in this, but I would love to just have everyone involved in it to just take another pass and see how we can end up taking the budget down by even just bringing it down to 4%, because we as a town do end up having to vote for this, and I want to make sure that every community member is satisfied with this, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who do pay for it from the tax perspective. So again, thank you. I think it's great, but again, I would love to see what else we can do and what we can change.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Taylor?
I want to thank Dr. Hill and the entire team. It is not easy to get a budget together, and even from a perspective of when you're thinking of the things that we have to do no matter what, which is our contractual, agreements. It's really easy for us to, or anybody in the community to say, hey, cut this, but not that. And everybody is coming from different viewpoints of what's important to them. But I'll tell you what's important to me, and it's those, it's the people that are in the buildings. That's the students and the people who work in our buildings. That's important to me. And making sure that, to Mr. Wollaston's point, that a family like myself who grew up in Windsor, who went to Sage Park, I was there in 7th grade in 1993 when the building was built. So for anybody to say, oh, we have to fix that, well, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I was there in 7th grade when the building was built. So yes, it's time to do some updates. Yes, it's time to figure some things out, because over time, like in our own homes, you're going to have to do that. And it costs money. And so I want people to think about that. I also want people to think about us being, from an HR perspective, about being a competitive district. I know that sometimes people leave for money, but I also know some people stay for a culture and climate that makes them feel included, for a culture and climate that makes sure that our kiddos are getting what they need. And I just know that there's people in our buildings, to Mrs. Fury, there's people, countless people who stayed in Windsor over years, right, decades. They could have gone outside the district and got more money, but they weren't going to feel like they felt treated in our buildings, and I think that's super important. If I had, all the money in the world, I'm going to keep playing the Powerball so I can do an endowment or whatever, but until that happens, I would love to see us pay these people more. My mom was an educator for 40 years. And Hartford got her back, right? Because there's not enough special education teachers. That's why. There's not enough people coming through with those credentials to do the work. And I just feel like if we have to make sure that our substitute teachers stay, so that we have building subs, that we can have people who retire come back to help us, I think that we're going to have to put our money where our mouths are. We're going to have to stop saying, oh, pay for that, but not for that. and just get down to the brass tacks of what exactly are we talking about here. You didn't ask for anything shiny and fancy. You're not asking for anything to be laden in gold. You're asking for basically the bare minimum. So if I had my way, we would be putting more money towards special education, SEL, because if our kiddos aren't good, they're not going to be able to learn. But this is as lean as you could get it. If you could get it any leaner, then to Mr. Halleck's point, then we're going to start losing positions. So I just want to, I don't know, for the community's perspective, from my seat as a parent, as a person who grew up here, and a taxpayer, you know, I own a home here, I just want you to know we understand it's not easy, and you had to make some tough decisions to do what you're doing. But if there's anything more that you would have put in, I would say put it in there because, you know, shoot for the stars and then let us knock it down. But I can't imagine knocking anything down from this book, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cantor?
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Hill and administration for preparing the budget. I know it's very time-consuming and to go through everything. I know there were so many cuts that you cut across, decreasing expenses, and there were so many incurred new expenses that everybody has incurred throughout the United States that we have no control over. And so many increases, and it just keeps going on and on. Companies are laying off employees now throughout the United States, and I'm concerned about a lot of people here not being able to afford things. So I think you did a great job, but I would like to caucus with my group for a while to see what we can come up with, if we can look at maybe postage or something like that that I had mentioned before, because I think every little bit helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fury?
Thank you. I do want to reiterate what everyone's really said. Thank you to Dr. Hill and his staff. This was clearly not an easy budget and not an easy year, with inflation last year close to 7%, and now they're saying, you know, projected higher potentially over time. Yet we came out with a budget that was a rollover budget of 6.2%, and we got it down, he got it down with his staff to 4.84%. I know one of the speakers early on, Mr. Madison, was surprised that it was able to be done, and lauded Dr. Hill for his work with the budget. And I'm clearly going to support this budget as presented, though as some people are talking about possible cuts and things, I'm looking at possible add-ons. I'm concerned about the number of paras. We were told there are more paras now than there actually are in this budget. Also, I don't want to have our contracts be to the point that we lose a lot more paras and have to train them, and we're required by law. There's a certain amount of hours of training that goes on. We know the last couple of years around the country, there's been teacher shortages and teacher issues. And we want to be able to hire good staff and then train them and then keep them here. We adjusted in our negotiations with the WEA contract. We looked at where we might be losing staff, and we adjusted, and the WEA agreed mutually, because that's what happens when you have a contract, luckily, unless you go to arbitration. And they agreed to certain changes to try to hold on to staff that we have. I'm concerned, as probably you'll hear probably from Mr. Lockhart, about major maintenance being a zero increase. That's a concern because we've been trying to add back to that, but it's also a concern that prices are going to be much higher. So with that zero increase, we're going to be doing less work. It's just because prices are more. We've looked at the prices on plant operations and plant maintenance, and those are all going up for maintenance. So why wouldn't major maintenance costs also be going up? I think the SEL folks that we're able to retain most of them through having ESSER money again next year and adding some into the budget is great. I know I want to see our state legislature coming up, and I'm hoping other boards of education will push for the state funding of more SEL help so that when we lose the rest of the ESSER money, that we'll be in a position where people value that type of service. Many districts over the years at CABE did mental health screening on students where we have not done. They talked about eye exams and hearing exams, but what about mental health? A child can look fine. You don't know necessarily what's going on. So SEL, and I use SEL not only for students, but SEL for staff, SEL for parents, and that connectedness that we have. Luckily, we do have the community partnership program here as well. Mr. Pelkey talked about CTE, and this board on both sides of the aisle talked about the importance of adding more vocational opportunities, and I'm in agreement with that. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Panos?
Thank you. I think it's a fairly reasonable budget. You know, I mean, it could have been higher, like I say, but we do have to be mindful of you know, what we do. You know, not to be oppositional here, but you know, if you try to be all things to all people, you can lose sight of your main goal, which is the academics and the deportment of the that you're trying to get. And so we have to be a little careful with this sort of thing. We'd like to have, like, for example, any new position that we put in, such as SEL, if we put it on budget, we really should be looking to remove something else that might be similar to it if there's overlap of that kind, because there are a lot of these ancillary type, as have been mentioned here. You know, you have you're looking for a lot of psychological services or whatever, and for us not to lose sight of what our key objective is. You know, we're here to instruct and teach students the basics of you know, thinking correctly, know how to think, and know how to deal with concepts. And so, you know, I don't want to say the 3 R's, but I suppose some people would say that, you know, just using that as a little catchphrase. We obviously have a problem with the large increases yearly of special ed tuition. This is kind of driving things up. This was a significant, this was just itself was this year 1.5% of the percentage points of that 4.85. That is a lot of money. And this is, you're talking about, you know, 50 kids. That's it. And so there's something going on that will that is out there that is driving those costs, and those go up with or without the inflation here. They just go up more with the inflation now. And so I think Mr. Lockhart may have something to say about that during the Board of Ed meeting that is a legislature thing. As we know, the state has reneged on paying what they claimed they would pay, you know, and so we end up not even getting what they promised by any means. And so that's, when these items go up, they really need to investigate why they are. I also have some concerns over the increases in the technology budget. These were, I think we discussed this issue. There were a lot of promises that this would lead to economies, and now we're told, well, I guess that's not so, or maybe there are economies in some way, or maybe the work has expanded to meet you know, what people can do with technology, and we have to get a handle on that. And so I think we have to look at it, give it a look, and just spend some time over the next few weeks with our caucuses, and then get back and make our final things. But you know, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Panos. I'm going to start by saying thank you to the committee. Thank you for being deliberative. Thank you for being appreciative of the presentation made by Dr. Hill and his staff. Dr. Hill, thank you to you and your staff. Thank you for being very intentional with your budget, how it's presented, and not just rolling over, but actually from your lens, through your staff's lens, exactly what you feel you can do, which you presented to us. For me personally, I recognize that when I sit up here, I don't represent just me in my house. I represent everyone's household. It doesn't matter your race, color, political party, doesn't matter. We represent all the citizens. So as a principal person, I should be voting no on this budget every year. We don't do enough with major maintenance. We don't do enough with my priorities, which is technology, which is career tech ed. We definitely should be doing more with the supports, especially with paras and interventionists, in my opinion. But I understand we do not have an infinite bucket of funds to do that. I think this budget alone should force this board in open session to support House Bill 5003, which would force the state to start paying their full share, especially with special education, especially with the ECS funding. We need that push now because the ESSER fund's about to run out, and this will be a great overlap for them to start paying their fair share so that everything that we've gained with the ESSER funds, we're not going to be dropping anything that's paid with ESSER funding. We'll be able to carry that stuff over, so it's sustainable. So I believe it will be in the best interest of Windsor to take a serious look at that and to have this full Board of Education hopefully come together with some agreement in principle that we agree what they're trying to do. We may have some differences between the two caucuses on how they go about doing it, but I think we all agree the state of Connecticut should be paying exactly what they say they're supposed to be paying instead of paying us partial here, partial there, because it's impacting every single child in the state of Connecticut. Like I said, major maintenance, I've always been a proponent of $100,000 for each elementary school, $200,000 for the Sage Park, and $250,000 every year for the high school. And that's including with the break fixes, that's including prepare for any catastrophic failures. I'm a proponent of preventive maintenance so that when you get some type of a failure, it's not as drastic as it could be because of the neglect. We've been neglecting our physical plant. We've heard through Chuck that we have still some leaky buildings, and at times we have some unhealthy buildings for various reasons, wear and tear, whatever. We have some aged buildings in our district as well that hopefully that the town council understand that if it gets to a point, these aged buildings will just at some point give out because of its age, and then we're going to have to deal with those situations as we move down that path. I will support this budget. Dr. Hill is very intentional about cutting what he felt he can cut, absorbing where he felt he can absorb. I agree with you, the community service coordinator is something that's a position that could be to itself, Mr. Halleck. Currently, I believe that's being absorbed by responsibility of the principal and his staff. I would love to see more, like I said, in career tech ed. But at the end of the day, we need, what I heard is we need more paras. We're spending a lot of money on special education. That's something we can't control. That's another reason why we should be supporting House Bill 5003 to get that spending under control. I've always been a proponent of making sure that we win our students back within our district. We've done a good job of that over the years. The students didn't leave overnight, and them bringing them home is not going to happen overnight as well. But we have to make sure that we're very intentional and with some type of a vision where we're just throwing money at an issue, but we're being intentional and making sure that we're supportive of the superintendent. But more importantly, the superintendent comes back to us and shows us that the investment has one, been made, and number two, the progress that's being made with that investment. So I believe the superintendent has done that. I believe Ms. Batchelder has definitely laid out the fiscal plan in a very, very logical way where we get to see it. We get to see a historical perspective. And for me personally, I will support it. I would even support increases in some areas like Mr. Halleck would say with the community service coordinator. I would not be willing to cut a position just to add that position back in. But I believe that's a position that's definitely something that could be added, because that person is responsible for making sure that our kiddos graduate from the high school, and maybe provide him or her some support along the way with that as well. So I believe once we agree to pass this budget as a committee to the full board, I would transmit that to the president. At that point, I will shift back into my caucus leader status, start caucusing with my caucus, and then me and Mr. Panos will get to know each other over the next 15 days to make sure that we know exactly what direction our caucus would like to go. I do understand that we want to put our visions on the table, and that this may lead to several motions just to get our point across for debate. I'm open to that. But at the end of the day, what I want is to make sure all 9 members are heard, and that we do have deliberative debate. It's going to be civil, it's going to be collaborative, and that we move on with a responsible budget that we're going to send to the town council. So we had a great process last year, and I expect it to be as equal this year. So with that being said, I'm assumptive that I have general consensus from the committee that we wish to send this to Mr. President to present at the next board meeting. Is there anyone objecting to that?
No.
All right, with that being said, there's no vote for that. I would assume that I have the authority on behalf of the committee to submit this to the president. I will send Sally and Dr. Hill a note, and I will copy Mr. Panos and Mr. Fury a email message stating of such. And then at that point, Mr. Fury will guide us through the process. Any questions of me as the chair? Seeing and hearing none, we've satisfied the agenda. With that being said, I'm very assumptive that I have general consensus that we may cancel the meeting for Tuesday, February 14th, 2023 in this room. Do I have consensus to cancel that meeting?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Without objection, so ordered. Dr. Hill, we can have that removed from our calendar.
Okay.
And with that being said, the last thing that's on the agenda at this point is motion to adjourn. Is there such a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Panos made the motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
Motion made by Mr. Panos, second by Ms. Cantor, to adjourn. Any discussion?
Stay.
Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Abstention. Motion carries 9-0-0. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.